Okay, we talked about having a game manager that's going to load scenes in the last video, but we don't have a game manager yet. So let's create one. To do that, we're just going to right click and create a new C# script, and we'll call it game manager. And you see it automatically got a special icon that's just based off the name of the object here. Don't worry about that. Kind of helps us know that, hey, this is a pretty important special script. So let's open it up. Let's just double click on that script. And right now, of course, it's going to be empty. And we want to really just make this thing pretty lightweight, but we want to keep it controlling the state of the game. So knowing if we're kind of at menu and level selection stuff, if we're in game, if we're at some game over state, all that kind of stuff is going to be dealt with in here. Now to start, we're going to keep it simple. We just need a way to actually kick off our game and load the next scene. So I'm going to delete the start and update methods here as soon as it stops loading. There we go. And then I just want to add a public method that's going to start loading things up, start loading up the new scene. So I'm going to make a public void begin. And in here, we'll start a coroutine, and we'll call this begin game. And I'm going to clean up my formatting and hit control period to generate that method. So begin game is going to use an IEnumerator. It's going to be a coroutine, and that's just because we want to load the scene asynchronously. We don't want to load our level and have the rest of the game kind of freeze up and be blocking. On mobile, you know, it could say, hey, this is no longer responding. On a console, we could run into other problems, and we want to keep everything responsive and going. So we're going to do this in a coroutine just like this. So we'll delete out that line 16, that throw null reference exception. And instead, we're going to say async operation, and I'll just call this operation, equals scene manager, got to capitalize that M, manager, and I hit control period to add the using statement for Unity Engine.scene management. So scene manager.load scene async, luckily it's the one that was automatically selected for us. And then we need to give it either an index, a name, or an index in a load mode, or a name in a load mode. For now, we're going to go with just an index, 1. This will be our second scene. And then we need to give it the mode, scene load mode dot additive. And we'll put a semicolon there. Now, this is just going to kick off a load, and it's going to give us back an operation that we can check the state of, so we know whether or not it's done or when it's finished loading. So we can say while operation dot is done equals false, yield return null. So what's that doing? It's sitting there waiting for the scene to finish loading, and every frame it's just going to keep coming back into here and say, hey, it's not done, don't do anything. Hey, it's not done, don't do anything. And then when it is done, it's going to call our code after this. So this is basically just making it wait until the operation has completed. Now, when it's done, we're just going to begin with a log entry. So we'll just say debug.log start, or game beginning. There we go. Just something so that we know, hey, this finished, it loaded, and we're on to the next part. Eventually, we're going to hook this up to tell our player manager to have our players spawn their characters. For now, though, a simple log will do. And I'm going to remove these extra using statements, clean up some of this white space real quick, get it nice and clean, and save the file. Now we need something to actually call our begin method. Before we do that, though, let's turn our game manager into a singleton. So we'll add a private static game manager. We'll call this instance. Whoops. No, let's make it a public static game manager, and we'll call it instance with a capital I. If I could spell this right. I-N-S-T-A-N-C-E. There we go. And then we'll give it a getter and a private setter. And then in the awake method, so just do private void awake, and we'll just set instance to this. So again, this is just giving us an easy way to look up our game manager without doing a find object of type. And of course, there are some other ways to do this. We can create a mono singleton base class type and then inherit from that. And it just kind of minimizes the amount of code rewriting that we have to do. In this case, I don't think it's really worthwhile, and this gives us good enough insight into the life cycle of our singletons without having to overcomplicate things. In other projects, a lot of time I'll use a mono singleton if I'm using a bunch of them. In this project, I don't foresee us having very many though, so we probably won't make that jump just because we don't need to. Okay, anyway, we've got an instance variable here now, so I should be able to call my game manager .instance and tell it to .begin whenever we've clicked ready and started, right? So let's go back to the game real quick and just, oh, I'm in the wrong scene. Let me load the correct scene. So go back into the menu scene. And by the way, you can drag both of these out and have these both loaded at the same time. In this case, I don't really need level 1 loaded, so I'm just going to load the menu, but I want to make sure that that's obvious that you can do that. So anyway, we're back in. I hit A. Let's see. I hit A. Oh, well, let's give it focus. Now I hit A. Remember, the game view has to have focus to read the input like that. And then I'll go over to Wizard, and I hit A. And remember, we have the Start Game button, and what I like to do is I hit A one more time, and it starts. So that would call in to the Game Manager and tell it to begin. So let's take a look at our menu code again. And I believe we're looking right here in the UI character selection menu. And this menu, let's see, has a check right here to see whether or not start should be enabled. Basically checking to make sure that our locked player count matches our player count and that we have at least one player in. So what I'm going to do now is add a method here. Public void try start game. And here we'll check to see if start enabled is true. And I can't do that yet because start enabled is actually in the scope of this other method. It's in the scope of our update, so it only exists right here. Now, I really need this start enabled Boolean to be a little bit more accessible, and I don't want to do this check again every time I want to check it. So what I'm going to do is delete the word bool there, hit control period, and turn it into a field. It just generates it as a private field up here, and now it's accessible down here as well. And remember, the default value is going to be false because it's a bool. So it's never going to get to true until we have a player in and they're locked. So now if start is enabled, I'll just call game manager.instance.begin. And I also want to just turn off this menu. So I'll just say gameObject.setActive false for now. So that was just a temporary way to just flip off our menu and tell the game manager to start playing. Now, we're still not calling our try start game. So let's figure out where we're doing that. And you may have guessed, but it's just going to be in this UI character selection marker. So right now we have the player saying, hey, if I'm press attack and I'm not locked, remember this is all if I'm not locked, then lock. Now what I also want to do is else. So this would be, let's just zoom out a little bit. So here I'm checking if I'm not locked in, I do whatever's in there. If I am locked in, I want to check for the attack button being pressed again. So just copy that. And then I want to tell the menu to start playing. Say, hey menu, try starting. Now the menu is the final decision maker here on whether or not it's going to pass the start call into the game manager, and it's going to do that based on the state of all of the players. And that's where I want to keep it. I don't want the player to have to know that other players are locked in. I don't want the game manager to know anything really about the menu. I just want this menu thing to say, hey, everybody's good, they're ready, and one of them is requesting a start. So we're going to call menu.try start game. Pretty simple. When I hit play though, you're going to notice something. So let's save and play. And there's one issue that you may notice. Well, you should notice. So here we go. I'll play. I go in. I pick Wizard. And I hit start. And, oh, we've got a no reference exception. Well, this is the first issue. So what did we do? Let's think for a second. Before I spill it, I want to see if you can figure out what the problem is. So pause for just a second. Think about it. If you don't know the answer, just hit resume. Okay, so the problem is actually very simple. We need a game manager in our scene. So create an empty game object, spell game manager right, give them the R, and we'll add that script. and reset. Remember, this happens all the time. It's like the #1 issue that I run into is just writing code, forgetting to drop it in. So got to get used to it and just have that kind of be your go-to thing. Like, hey, did I actually put that in there? So let's see. Now I hit play, joined, picked a wizard, hit start game, and oh, something happened, right? What's the issue though? What's going on here? If we look at our console log, we'll see a couple errors. So scene with build index 1 could not be loaded because it has not been added to the build settings. Object not set to instance of object on line 22. So go to line 22. Operation is null. The scene couldn't be loaded. And think again for why. I'm just holding here real quick while you think. And if you didn't think of it yet, it's right here in build settings. We have not added our scenes to our build settings. Remember, the scene manager is using the scenes in this build settings to determine what you actually want to load, what you want your players to play. So I'm going to add this open scene. Then I'm going to go to the project view, go to scenes, and drop in level 1. Now it's really important, again, go to file, save project. Otherwise, something blows up, computer resets randomly, you load back in, those scenes are going to be missing, and you're going to hit the same problem and not think to go back and look because, hey, I already fixed that, right? So anyway, make sure you save your project. Save often. All right, let's try again. And I hit it, and I'm in. Look at that. So now I have a player that's loaded a scene, and I can't do anything yet. There's nothing in the scene. I don't have a character. But no, we're loading in the scene. We're good. We're almost there. The next step is going to be to spawn a character, assign that character to our menu option there, and then give the player control over that character. So once you've got to this point and you can load in, go ahead and come over to the next video. We're actually going to make one more minor change to this system, and then we're going to go about spawning a character and moving them around, getting ready to start killing things.